What is psychological weakness? The hidden disease of the mind. What does it truly mean to be weak? Most people think of weakness as something physical, being out of shape, lacking endurance, or having low energy. But to Nietzsche, the real weakness was not of the body but of the mind and spirit. Psychological weakness is a disease, but unlike a physical illness, it does not always show obvious symptoms. It creeps in slowly, infecting your thoughts, your decisions, and ultimately, your entire life. So, how do you recognize it? Nietzsche identified several traits of a weak mind. The victim mentality. Weak people believe that life is happening to them rather than them taking control of their own destiny. Instead of seeing obstacles as challenges to overcome, they see them as proof that the world is unfair. They blame society, their upbringing, bad luck, anything but themselves. Have you ever heard someone say, "I can't succeed because the system is against me," or "life isn't fair, so why even try?" These are the words of a person who has already surrendered before the battle even began. Avoidance of struggle. Nietzsche believed that struggle is necessary for growth, but weak individuals do everything in their power to avoid discomfort. They seek the easiest job, the safest path, and the most effortless way to live. But what happens when you avoid struggle? You do not grow. You become fragile, easily broken by even the smallest of hardships. And when the inevitable difficulties of life arise, you collapse, because you never built the mental muscle to withstand them. Dependence on external validation. The weak do not trust their own judgment. Instead, they seek approval from others. They fear rejection, so they conform to societal expectations, even when it goes against their own desires. They are afraid to stand alone, afraid to have unpopular opinions, afraid to be criticized. But Nietzsche asks, what kind of life is that? A life spent trying to please everyone except yourself? Living in illusions. Perhaps the greatest sign of weakness is self-deception. Many people lie to themselves about their own condition. Instead of admitting their flaws and working to fix them, they construct a fantasy world where they are already good enough, where their failures are always someone else's fault, and where they don't need to change. Nietzsche saw this as the ultimate tragedy, because how can you ever improve if you refuse to see the truth? Weakness is not just a condition, it's a choice. Nietzsche did not believe that weakness was something you were simply born with. He saw it as a choice, a mindset. There are people who are born into terrible circumstances, poverty, trauma, suffering, yet still rise above them. And there are people who have every opportunity handed to them, yet still waste their lives making excuses. The difference, the mindset of strength versus the mindset of weakness. The weak run from pain, the strong embrace it. The weak blame others, the strong take responsibility. The weak seek comfort, the strong seek challenge. And here is where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes difficult for many to accept. If you are weak, it is because you choose to be weak. It is easier to stay fragile, to stay comfortable, to stay dependent. But that path leads to insignificance. Nietzsche's warning is clear. If you do not take control of your own mind, someone else will. If you do not build inner strength, you will be at the mercy of those who do. If you do not become strong, you will be nothing. The question is, will you accept this truth, or will you turn away from it? What's next? This is only the beginning. In the next section, we will explore how weakness turns into self-deception, how people convince themselves that their fragility is actually a virtue, and how society encourages this lie. Because in Nietzsche's eyes, the most dangerous kind of weakness is the one that disguises itself as morality. Stay tuned. How weakness becomes a lie. The self-deception trap. Weakness, in its raw form, is already dangerous. But according to Nietzsche, it doesn't stop there. The truly terrifying thing about weakness is that it often disguises itself as a virtue, a self-righteous lie that keeps people trapped in their own limitations. Think about it. No one wants to admit they are weak. No one likes to see themselves as incapable, fragile, or powerless. So instead of confronting their own inadequacy, the weak redefine their weakness as something noble. They tell themselves, "I'm not weak, I'm just morally superior. I don't avoid conflict because I'm afraid. I avoid it because I'm a good person. I don't lack ambition, I just don't care about material success. I don't push myself because I'm content, not because I'm incapable." But Nietzsche saw through this illusion. He believed that many of the so-called virtues that society upholds are actually just weakness in disguise. Take humility, for example. Society often preaches that being modest, self-effacing, and submissive is a sign of moral goodness. But Nietzsche asked, is humility really a virtue? Or is it just an excuse for those who fear power? Look at kindness and passivity. Many people say that being soft, forgiving, and accommodating is the right way to live. But Nietzsche argued that this belief often comes from those who are too weak to stand up for themselves. They do not choose kindness out of strength, but because they are afraid of conflict. Nietzsche saw this deception everywhere, in religion, in politics, in culture. He called it a morality of the weak, a system of values designed to justify fragility instead of overcoming it. And the worst part? This lie spreads. Weakness is not just a personal issue, it's a social disease. When enough people choose to remain weak, they start glorifying weakness itself. And before long, society begins to punish those who refuse to conform to this illusion. In today's world, you can see this everywhere. People attack those who are ambitious, calling them selfish. They criticize those who chase greatness, labeling them arrogant. They mock those who refuse to live in fear, saying they are too aggressive. But Nietzsche's message is clear. Do not fall for this lie. Strength is not evil. Weakness pretending to be righteousness is. True strength, embracing struggle and overcoming the self. So, if weakness is a lie, what does true strength look like? For Nietzsche, real strength was not just about physical power, intelligence, or social status. It was about the ability to face life without illusions, to confront suffering, hardship, and failure without running away. True strength means taking responsibility for your life even when things are unfair, facing uncomfortable truths even when they shatter your beliefs, pushing through suffering instead of seeking a way out, choosing growth over comfort, even when it's painful. Nietzsche admired those who struggled and became stronger because of it. He had a phrase for this: "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." But this wasn't just a motivational quote. It was a challenge. He believed that every hardship is a test, and how you respond to suffering determines whether you will rise or fall. A weak person sees failure as proof that they should quit. A strong person sees failure as fuel to keep going. A weak person seeks comfort and safety. A strong person seeks struggle and growth. Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, or the Superman, was built on this principle. The Übermensch is not someone who avoids suffering, but someone who transforms it into power. Imagine two people. One person is constantly searching for happiness, ease, and validation. They avoid risk, they seek approval, and they fear struggle. This person may feel safe, but they will never be great. The other person is constantly challenging themselves, pushing their limits and embracing hardship. They suffer, they fail, they fall down, but every time, they rise stronger. Which person will leave a mark on the world? Nietzsche had no doubt. Only those who embrace suffering as part of life will ever achieve true greatness. The poison of pity. Why Nietzsche rejected compassion for the weak. One of Nietzsche's most controversial beliefs was his hatred of pity. Most people believe that pity is kindness, that feeling sorry for someone is an act of compassion. But Nietzsche saw pity as a trap, a poison that keeps people weak instead of pushing them to be strong. Why? Because pity reinforces weakness instead of overcoming it. When you pity someone, what are you really telling them? You are saying, you are helpless. You cannot fix your situation. You are a victim. Instead of challenging them to rise, you confirm their weakness. Instead of pushing them towards strength, you allow them to stay fragile. Nietzsche believed that true compassion is not about feeling sorry for people. It's about helping them become stronger. If someone you love is suffering, should you pity them, tell them it's not their fault, and let them remain weak? Push them, remind them of their power, and challenge them to fight back? Nietzsche's answer was clear. Pity does not help people. It keeps them trapped. This is why he criticized religion, especially Christianity, for glorifying suffering. He believed that religions often tell people to be meek, passive, and accepting of pain, instead of encouraging them to fight back. To Nietzsche, the greatest kindness you could show someone was not to comfort them in their weakness, but to inspire them to become strong. So the next time you feel pity for someone, ask yourself, are you truly helping them? Or are you just making them more dependent on your sympathy? Nietzsche believed that the best way to love someone is to help them become strong enough to stand on their own, love life, and accept reality. Nietzsche's Amor Fati. After rejecting weakness, pity, and self-deception, what comes next? What is the final step in Nietzsche's philosophy of strength? The answer lies in one of his most powerful ideas, Amor Fati, which means love your fate. Most people resent their circumstances. They wish things were different. They complain about their past, their struggles, their failures. They spend their energy wishing that life was easier, that fate had been kinder. But Nietzsche saw this as a complete waste of time. He argued that true strength comes from fully embracing life, not just the good parts, but the pain, the hardship, and the suffering as well. Instead of resisting reality, the strong love it. Imagine if you could look at every failure, every setback, every painful moment in your life and say, this is exactly what I needed. This hardship is making me stronger. I do not wish for a different fate. I embrace the one I have. This is Amor Fati. It is not just about accepting life. It is about loving it, completely and unconditionally, without resistance. Nietzsche believed that those who reject reality will always suffer. They will always feel like victims, always complain about how unfair life is, always feel powerless. But those who practice Amor Fati gain an incredible power. Nothing can break them. If they fail, they learn from it. If they suffer, they become stronger. If life is cruel, they do not resist, they transform the pain into power. This mindset is what separates the weak from the strong, the ordinary from the extraordinary, the victims from the conquerors. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And if you learn to love fate instead of fighting it, you will become unstoppable. Will you choose strength or weakness? Now, we have explored Nietzsche's harsh but powerful philosophy, his views on weakness, self-deception, struggle, pity, and the power of embracing fate. But in the end, none of this matters unless you apply it to your own life. So ask yourself, do you recognize weakness in your own thoughts and actions? Have you ever made excuses instead of facing reality? Have you ever lied to yourself to avoid discomfort and challenge? Have you ever sought pity instead of growth? If so, then Nietzsche's message is clear. You must change. You have a choice. You can remain weak, fragile, and dependent. You can avoid struggle, fear hardship, and blame others. But if you do, you will never live fully. You will be nothing. Or you can choose the harder path, the path of strength, discipline, and truth. You can embrace pain, face your fears, and refuse to be a victim.